Hey, this is Jason over at GoPowerSports, and today we are going to uncrate the TrailMaster MB200. We're going to assemble it, and I will give you a few tips of what you need to do before you go on your first ride.
Yo, it's perfect.
So first off, what you want to do is unbolt this crate. I'm going to be using a 14mm socket and a 14mm wrench just to take the bottom bolts off this frame. Taped to your bike will be a MSO, your certificate of origin for vehicle. Now it looks like the bike is still connected to your frame with these two pieces of steel. We'll unbolt those as well with the same 14mm wrench and socket. Make sure you hold on to this hardware because you're going to run your shocks through these as well. Alright, so your frame is still connected through its front axle to the shipping crate. So we're going to use a 19 and a 17mm socket and wrench to disassemble. With that front axle, make sure that you hold on to the axle and the nut because your front tire and wheel assembly will run through this. Now I'm going to assemble the rear shocks. Take off the bubble wrap. Use the same hardware from earlier. Tighten your nuts and bolts back up with your 14mm socket and wrench. I just like to do it nice and snug. Now we can take the bike off the shipping crate. Now that you have the bike out of the shipping crate, you then have a bag of goodies, which will be your front tire and wheel assembly, fender, your hardware for your handlebars. Your front tire and wheel will not be inflated. I like to put around 20 pounds of pressure in here, and for a softer ride you can drop them down to 12 pounds, but at least 20 pounds so that it gets nice and beaded up. Alright, got the tire and wheel beaded up. Set that aside. Now we have our owner's manual, operation instructions for your gasoline. This is a baggie for your handlebar hardware and your front fender. I'm going to go through and cut off all the zip ties on this bike that are mounting the handlebars to the frame. I like to make sure that the wires aren't too crossed underneath it. Nice and free. The bottom part of the handlebar clamps are already mounted to the bike, so we just need to run the top. So you're going to have that upper handlebar mount with two of these long bolts. Now I have the handlebars set to where they're comfortable for me. I'm now going to snug up these top handlebar bolts, a little at a time. And now that they're set, I'll really tighten them down. Now that we have the front handlebars on, I'm going to install the front tire and wheel assembly. If you have a second person, that's best so they can hold it for you. If not, I like to put the kickstand down. If you'll notice on your wheel, these are directional. There is an arrow on both sides of these wheels. You want to make sure that arrow is facing forward. This one's facing forward, rotating in this direction. That's what we want. Alright, we got the front wheel on. Now we're going to snug it up with our 19 and our 17 mil sockets. Now you want to match the same bolt pattern as your fender bracket. 2 in the front, 1 in the rear. I like to mount these on loose until I get all 3 of the bolts through the holes. Alright, now that we have the front fender on, let's snug it up with a 10 mil socket and a 10 mil wrench. Now she's all assembled. Alright, so after you have your MB200 all put together, I would still go through every single bolt that's on here and make sure it's nice and tight, just in case. You never know. Even after your first ride, I would go through and retighten all your bolts. Now the MB200 does ship with oil, which is fine if you wanted to just crank it up for like the first 30 minutes and let the engine just get nice and warm. So we can do a heat cycle. After that 30 minutes, I would put either the Briggs 4T oil or your straight 30 oil, 10W30, 10W40. Now since there's already oil in here, I'll put gas in here and see if we can get it to start up for us. You can check your oil up front. There's a little dipstick in between the front neck and the front of the engine. Alright, we've checked it for oil, we've put gas in there. We have this kill switch up front. It's flipped to on. Alright, so before you start your MB200, you want to make sure that this bottom lever is flipped towards the front of the bike. That's going to turn the fuel on. The one right above it is the choke. Towards the back means the choke is on. Towards the front means the choke is off. Whenever you're starting to ride, flip that choke off and you'll be good to ride. Now that we've let our engine idle for about 30 minutes, I'm now going to dump the old oil and put in this Briggs 4T oil. Alright, another thing to check for on this bike is your chain tension. In between both your sprockets, you want to grab your chain and you only want about 3/8 of play. That's all the way up to all the way down. You only want 3/8 of play. Right now it is set pretty nicely. The chain will stretch over time. So after it does stretch and you do have a lot of slop in there, you can loosen up your rear axle and your brake bracket, and you can go ahead and use your chain adjusters to pull your rear wheel back so that you can help tension the chain. Also let you know, whenever you're taking the plastic off of your MB200, there are rubber stops on the bottom side of here. you want to do it properly, I would unscrew the seat from the frame and then take the plastic off so that you avoid pulling those rubber stops out. Me, I'm lazy. Alright, if you wanted to change out your engine's oil, you're going to use a 10 mil wrench right here at the very front of your engine. Once you back that off, the oil will spew out of there. Close it back up and you're going to refill this engine with 14 to 16 ounces of oil, which you can do right up here in this oil cap right up front. Alright, so on the MB200, this bike takes a 420 chain. If you are replacing chain, you're going to want 5 feet of 420 chain. That'll give you extra links to where after you wrap it around your sprocket, you're able to take a few links out and reconnect it with the master link. We prefer the DID performance chain. TrailMaster MB200 comes with a 30 series torque converter. On there now is a 669 belt. We prefer a 788 belt, which is a little bit longer if you're still using the stock setup. If you have changed 30 series drivers to a bushing style driver, you'll then use a 725 belt, which is also a 30 series belt. It's in between the 669 and the 788 in length. Where'd that go? Here's everything I used in today's assembly. A 10, 14, and 19 millimeter wrench, a 10, a 14, and a 17 mil socket, along with an impact, a pair of dikes to cut the zip ties, and a knife or an all-purpose tool just to cut away the plastic. Alright, we've assembled the bike. We've made sure all the nuts and bolts are nice and tight. We've put new oil in there. We have gas in there. We've already tuned in our carburetor. Now you're good to ride. Go out there and have some fun on your TrailMaster MB200.